Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 426, SBFTrial lunch break. It is a lot of stuff came out from the financial expert from the prosecution. Originally opened up with Alora Katz. We're going to go into her in just a second. We're having a quite little issue with the Twitter space, and so we're going to just check on that real quick, make sure that that's running. We might have got rugged. So we're going to skip that and make sure we're there. And we are back. So yes, we are live. Hello, and welcome to another episode of TacoBytes, your daily bite of Degen, episode number 426. We are coming to you live from the steps of the SBF trial, day number 11. We do have video live streaming as well. We want to do a quick shout out to everyone on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Telegram, Discord, LinkedIn, and to our entire family over at Unlonely. As I was saying, we originally opened up with Alora Katz, one of the amazing reporters here from The Verge. Sort of said it best that she was almost like the Aubrey Plaza of witnesses. Basically, everything that she said, she wanted to make sure. She said that she had no business writing or anything like that. She was the director of government policy and liaison based out of DC. And so we saw a lot of issues with that come across. One of the big things that, they sort of just used was a bunch of irresponsible actors in this space. FTX is not one of them. Tweets from Sam. While his reportings from C-SPAN, and then sort of come across. I had to step out of the courtroom for just a second, and by the time I came back, prosecution was done and defense was already done with her as well, and I literally just took a note of WTF. But really what that purpose was to showcase the live evidence of him on C-SPAN and showcasing him, promoting not just political views, but messages of FTX and how it was doing things when it really wasn't. This is where we then came into the big aspect. Peter Easton, he is the professor of University of Research and Accounting at the University of Notre Dame, where he has been for the last 12 years. He has over 40 years of teaching and being a professor in this background. A little bit of background for him. He was one other crypto case that he was part of. He does deep penetrating details of account practices, and he is 3 cases that he has been on was Enron, Palrod, and Encom. The only other crypto case he has been on was the SEC versus Ripple. I do not know if he was on behalf of SEC or Ripple. Based on his testimony and sort of the way he presented stuff, I'm assuming he was on the SEC side, but I do not know for sure. What he was able to do was find out when things were paid out to outside sources through account practices, able to find out if it was where the funds came from, whether it was FTX customer funds or other funds or investor funds, and then broke it down into really good picture diagrams for the jury, which really broke it down. So what he was basing this information off was bank statements, FTX records, third-party lenders, and blockchain. One of the quotes, 2 quotes that he made that I loved, blockchain will exist forever, as he was sort of saying. One of the main conclusions that he came to 5 conclusions. One of the number one was the amount of customer deposits held in Alameda and FTX bank accounts was far less than what was owed to customers. He did talk about, the prosecution did go through his pedigree and whether or not he'd already been paid, how much he'd been paid, to sort of get all of that out of the way, and that, whether him getting paid had no reflection on the outcome of the case or his testimony. And so what his overstated task was understanding the fiat use of and by FTX and Alameda. And so what he saw with the FTX accounting methods was they were using a double entry accounting method, which is a standard practice, been around forever, where a customer bank account would transfer money to North Dimension, FTX, or Alameda, and then the fiat at FTX account would subtract that amount from their balance, and then the customer account would go plus that amount on FTX. And so it's a standard accounting practice that is used. I'm going to sort of skip over some of the other stuff that was sort of gone through. But one of the things that he did talk about was there was over 47 accounts total that accepted customer funds. And those were both FTX accounts and then Alameda accounts that also funneled to SBF himself. And so he was asked, was any of the customer funds used for other things? And he said, oh, yes. Investments, political, and charities, and outside loans. So we are going to break these down. We're trying, because of the way the diagrams were coming out, we had and going through so quickly, we at first didn't have a really good, clean way of writing it down, but we quickly found a way to transpose a lot of this information. And so we're going to go through some of this, and it will get more interesting. There's some fun stuff out here. You'll see some tweets. But one of the things as customer funds, other inflow of funds into Alameda, which would then go into either another Alameda account, and then another FTX or Alameda account or a new entity, and then paid back to a service. But what this did was waste customer funds, use customer funds for outside sources. One of the first things that they went to was that they showed that K5 being the celebrity endorsement project that all of these celebrities were paid from, that $765.7 million was paid from customer funds. So all of these celebrities, the Clintons, Leonardo DiCaprio, football stars, the sports deals, Kevin O'Leary, everyone. Larry David was paid 765.7 million of those deals was paid from customer funds, and roughly for that deal to K5, only roughly 200 million was paid from other funds that they did not necessarily designate. One of the other pieces that they showed was Anthropic, a total of $469.9 million from customer funds was used. Robinhood was a very interesting piece because they sort of shaped it around and made other entities to sort of hide it, but then put it back onto Alameda's books. But customer funds, $527.2 million of customer funds was used to buy Robinhood shares, and that equated to roughly 56.7 million shares of Robinhood was used to buy with customer funds. Of that, let's see, that was sort of, and then what was weird is it went from that 527 million went to Alameda Research, then went to separated into Sam and Gary Wong accounts, personal accounts, that they then combined into a new entity, Paperbird, which then bought those shares, and then those shares were given back to Alameda, but in Sam and Gary's name. So Sam and Gary owned the shares. Alameda had property of them to use them as collateral for other things. One of the things then they also showed was that the GMI PAC for Senator Bozeman received roughly $1 million in customer funds. And that was, so actually 1.2 million total. 1 million was from customer funds that went from customer funds to North Dimension to Brian Salam that paid the GMI PAC for that. And including messages from SBF that I can route more funds through my name if needed. One of the things then that then came up next on the political side of things was from Barbara Friedman in an email to Sam and Nishad. Thank you for your, let's get ready for your $1 million pledge to the Mind the Gap political fund. And this was done on 4/12/2021. That then routed roughly $1 million directly from customer funds to Alameda Research, to Nishad, to Mind the Gap, that was ran by Barbara Friedman. Next up, we saw GAP, which is the other political super PAC ran by Gabe Fried, which is Sam's younger brother. $320.3 million was funneled from customer funds to Alameda Research account 446. Then 30 million of that was transferred to Alameda Research account 405, and from 405, $30 million was sent to GAP. And so they could say that all $30 million sent to GAP was directly from customer funds. Next up, we saw FTX Foundation receiving $20 million in customer funds. And how that was proposed was $25 million worth of customer funds was moved to Alameda Research account 4605. And then from there, it was moved to North Dimension. 20 million was moved to North Dimension, and then that 20 million was then moved to the FTX Foundation. So customer funds were used for good, at least a little bit, maybe. I don't know what FTX Foundation did. This is then when they got into the property side of things. And a total of $96 million was used in real estate. And from that, 115 million from customer funds was transferred to Alameda Research account 945. And from that, 100 million was moved to FTX Limited Prime Trust. And then 100 million was moved to FTX Wells Fargo. And then of that, 100 million was moved to Bahama Prime Trust Real Estate. And then from that Bahama Prime Trust, 96 million was moved into buying real estate. That included the Orchid 6 penthouse that $30 million was spent on. Next up, they had a separate payment for FTX Limited to pay and buy random things and property and cars and other things for employees. That had $181.3 million from investor funds and 1.5 million from other inflow funds. And these were other inflow funds that they couldn't necessarily pinpoint the total value or total places that came from, but that's what they sort of did. Of this, they said that they named out Alan and Barb, Sam's parents, as receiving, and this is from that FTX Limited that was then paid out. They received a payment of $16.64 million from customer funds and $1.64 million from other inflow funds. This is then when they did a really good breakdown of missing $9 billion that was from the total of $11.3 billion of fiat that they should have had, and the $9 billion that they had. So they had roughly $2.3 billion in fiat. And then they had paid $1.2 billion to Genesis, $600 million to K5, Anthropic $500 million, Dave Inc. $100 million, Modulo, Modulo, $50 million, other ventures $1.4 billion, Paperbird received over $413.3 million, Outflow inside to insiders was 195.2 million, and that's in the inner circle staff and other things like that. Other unaccounted for things expenditures was 3.1 billion, and FTX found. So out of all of those things that I just named off, that $9 billion missing, that total was 11.3 billion. Only 2.3 billion was actually in the accounts, and so Alameda and FTX accounts. So the rest of it came from customer funds. Then he moved over to blockchain. And this was a really good time. This is where I had a blast. I did get a little upset because we'll talk about finance in just a second. But one of the great things that he said, and I was like, second quote of the day from him, much finer data we can get off of the blockchain. So I love that clean line. I hope that gets pushed out there a lot. Much finer data we can find, or much finer data we can get off the blockchain. And so he showed that it should have $11.4 billion worth of crypto in their accounts, but there was only $1.1 billion, and it was missing a total of $10.3 billion. They only tracked 9 currencies, not all of the tokens, and what that sort of did was, he said at that point, it would only either make the gap bigger or keep it the same. It wouldn't close the gap at all, and that's where that was at. And so then they jumped over to allowing negative because they had complete access to FTX data files. And so he said that, in the data, in the code, it was a specific line item written into the code that Alameda had that $65 billion line of credit that it could borrow against without collateral that we saw the other day that from Nishad talking about it. Of the total Alameda accounts that had the allow negative feature, there was 57 accounts that were allowed to have the allow negative, 0 customer accounts. One of the questions I really had was because FTX's internal practices were shaky at best sometimes, was whether or not that could be turned off or on, and if that was tracked, whether or not customer accounts might have had it turned on or something and then turned back off, especially around some of the inflow outflow that we saw near the FTX's death spiral. They did show a quick form of how negative that the account balances were in crypto, and we apologize. There is a news helicopter going over because in the courthouse next to us, Trump is going on, and so presidential helicopters and whatnot are flying overhead. Yeah, it is pretty interesting thing. Yeah, so yay. Okay, that was cool. So now we go into Binance, and the big thing within Binance, what happened there was that Binance, we need to make sure we are still going. All right. And so what we then saw from that was this was about the FTX buyback of stock from Binance. And so this was one thing that they talked about BNB, and then he said BUSD. He said Bitcoin stable dollar. I cringed inside. Oh, man. But he said that BNB and BUSD was used to buy back all of FTX's stock from Binance. And so that was a total of $2.2 billion. From all of this, it was found that $1.2 billion of customer funds were used from the prosecution's attorney, Professor Easton, on that $1.2 billion of customer funds were used from Alameda account number 9. And this is sort of what we see a lot. Already Alameda account number 9 was at a negative of $1.8 billion. Now this 1.2 added to it brought it to a negative $3 billion owed. And that number, account number 9, just kept growing. And so that was sort of paid back to buy out Binance. So CZ, you were paid with customer funds. What are you going to do? now that this information just came out. Alameda borrowing from third-party lenders, there was a maximum of $15.4 billion in November of 2021. Towards the end, 1.3 billion, 2.9 billion, and 748 million was paid off, including 1.7 billion in new loans. When the debt spiral happened, 1.3 billion was still owed. These loans were then paid off with customer funds, and this is how they broke that down. 1.7 billion was paid of customer funds was paid to Genesis for a total of 3.5 billion. 1.8 billion came from other inflows. Customer funds, $1 billion was paid towards BlockFi. Voyager, $631 million of customer funds. FTX customer funds were paid to Voyager. Customer funds also were used to send $446 million to Celsius. Customer funds were used in the value of $168 million worth of customer funds was sent to Abra. $165.4 million worth of customer funds, FTX customer funds, was sent to Maple. $135.6 million of customer funds was sent to Anchorage Digital. $29.5 million worth of FTX customer funds was sent to Nexo. And $86.8 million worth of customers sent was TrueFi. $57.9 million worth of FTX customer funds was sent to Ledn, LED capital N, and $3 million worth of FTX customer funds was sent to BitGo. And so we saw this repeated multiple times. Of this, a total of $6.6 billion was paid towards loans. What they said, 4.5 billion was used from customer funds. 68% direct minimum was paid towards with customer funds. Looking at their charts and stuff like that, April 1st of 2022, they almost had an out. They could have just gone, if they had just gone, that was when the market started pump for a second. If they had just gone legit at that moment, everything could have been good. But they decided to just double down because the market was going great. And then the next thing you know, they got hit by, Luna, got hit by Three Arrows, Genesis, and Nomad. And that sort of brought down the rest, but they had a chance. They could have done good and right, and they could have done what Sam talked about doing. That is it for your daily bite of Degen. We will come to you at the end of the day, roughly somewhere time between 4:30 and 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The prosecution just rested on Professor Peter Douglas Easton. And so, he was also attorney in the SEC versus, or he wasn't an attorney. He was also a penetrating accounting practicer in details for securities and valuations. He's written books, textbooks, and over 50 articles. But he was on the SEC versus Ripple case, so I'm assuming he worked for the SEC. Very clear in his forms and stuff like that. And so what's really great if he was this clear, either he learned from his mistakes with the Ripple case, or what might have been perceived as mistakes, or that just goes to show how good the Ripple case was for Ripple. So, but really hats out to him for acknowledging the power of blockchain and how it was super clean on that. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will see you later on today. And as always, closed mouth cannot be fed, and you cannot feed a closed mouth, meaning if no one knows you're looking for opportunity cannot come and knocking. And if opportunity does come and knocking and no one answers, it's going to keep on walking. And with that, we end with the greatest, worst knock joke on the face of the planet. I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will see you this afternoon. But I hope you're ready for this. Are you ready for this? Because it is the best, worst knock joke on the face of the planet. Knock. Who's there?